There's some God you'll understand. I want to show you a picture, a painting actually, this evening that's going to appear on the screen. And this is a picture by a Quaker and a preacher in the 19th century, a guy called Edward Hicks. And the picture is called The Peaceable Kingdom. Now, Edward Hicks, he was born in 1780, and he was a sign writer. He wrote signs, and he became an artist. He was also a preacher, and so he composed this particular picture called The Peaceable Kingdom. And his type of art, some of you might be art scholars here this evening, he's known as a primitivist artist. And the idea is that he wasn't a professional, but there's kind of like a naive, childlike quality to this painting. And you'll see that some of the kind of animals have more like kind of childlike faces. It's called primitivism. Now, here's the interesting thing about Hicks. He painted this scene over 100 times, of which we still have at least 62 versions still alive, around. They sell for millions and millions of dollars and pounds, or whatever currency you're working in. Now, this picture is, you might have guessed, the reading that Joy just gave to us now. It's this picture from Isaiah chapter 11. That picture, which foretells a time when animals who normally kill each other and kill little children will live together. And here we have, I've got my clicker here. You realize you were going to get an art lecture tonight. You've got the children playing with the leopard, you see there. You've got the bear and the cow eating the same food together. You've got another little child up here. And the animals look all very kind of peaceable. And this is this portrait, The Peaceable Kingdom. I'm going to show you another version of it. Now, be prepared. This one's a little different. Oh, that's the reading. There you go. There's another version that Edward Hicks painted. Now, this chap, I mean, who knows what's going on in his mind? But we've got the same, or the leopard down here. We've still got the animals from Isaiah 11. This idea, this one day, that there'll be peace and harmony and people will get along. And here we go. So there's the picture. Now, you may have seen in the first picture, in the first one, this little scene over here. And in the picture I've just shown you also, we see it again here, slightly different. And this scene generally appears in the pictures as well. And this is the scene of someone called William Penn, who we get the state in America called Pennsylvania. This is William Penn about a century earlier making peace with the Lepine Indians, the kind of Native American Indians. Now, the Lepine Indians and William Penn, they were not in Isaiah 11. Joy didn't read those out. But this picture is always here. And again, it's a symbol for Edward Hicks of what human beings should be doing together. It's meant to be a picture of peace and harmony. So you had it in the first picture. You've got it in the second picture. I'm going to show you another one. We're not going to go through all 62. Don't worry. Don't worry. There you go. That's that kind of blown up. That's William Penn and the Native Americans, the Lepine Indians there. Now, this is another picture. Now, here's the interesting thing. You might be thinking, these pictures look all the same. This guy had something wrong with him. Why is he painting this picture? Now, what's interesting is that over Hicks's life, you might think the pictures look the same, but as Hicks gets older, as he starts living his life and things start to happen to him, as they do for all of us, the pictures subtly change. I think there's a slightly different feeling to this picture of the peaceable kingdom that's basically a little less peaceable. What can we see here? Well, I don't know, this person holding the lion's mane, I mean, this little child is kind of holding it. You don't have the Lepine Indians this time. But the animals look a little bit more restless. Here's another one. Now here, you see the animals are starting to spread out a little bit. The children are starting to move away. And what's interesting here is that there's been a tree in every one of the pictures. Look at this tree here. There's starting to be a crack in the tree. And lots of scholars said at this time in Hicks's life, there was real tension within his own Quaker community. There was a big split and people weren't getting on. It wasn't a peaceable kingdom. And so you see the animals are a bit less restless. And as you go on, here, this is a later version where Hicks is really kind of struggling to say, is there going to be the peace that we see in Isaiah 11? Now, those leopards do not look particularly friendly towards this little goat down here. Now, you've still got the Lepine Indians over here, but it all looks a bit darker. I'm going to show you one more, the last one that he painted, which I think I would interpret as being one of resignation, that people aren't really getting along even though we'd like to. Maybe it's a kind of a mellowing. Here's the last one. Now, this lion's so fed up of being drawn, he's basically falling asleep. Look. And you see the children are now moving away. They're moving away there. And the animals are spread out. It's a much darker picture. And this was penned towards the end of his life. Now, as I said, I don't know what you like in terms of art. You might think, oh, I wouldn't want one of those in my bathroom. Well, you probably would. You could sell it for a lot of money. But here's the interesting thing. We might think that this is primitivism. This is a kind of naive, not very good art. But I think there's something very real and realistic about these pictures that Edward Hicks painted. You see, I think all of us as human beings, we long for peace. We long for the end of war. We long for peace and reconciliation, whether it's personal or cultural or international. It's in our dreams. And I think we find it hard and almost impossible to suppress that sense. We want to be that family, don't we, who have the idyllic Christmas where everyone gets along with each other. We want that, even though we know we might not get it. We want the war in Ukraine to stop. We want people not to have to choose between fuel and food. We want justice done, and we want justice seen to be done. We want our leaders to be making decisions in our best interest rather than their own. You see, you might think that Hicks's painting is unrealistic of this time when everyone will get together, but Hicks saw the tension. These pictures illustrate the tension that's in between us. We want it there to be a peaceable kingdom, but we realize in our own lives, it's not like that. Now, if you think that Hicks is just kind of, on another planet, this is what we get into. Here are all the adverts for Christmas this year. You may have seen some of them. It's a kind of a summary of all the shopping supermarket adverts. And in some ways, this is painting a picture of a kind of a world that we would all kind of like. We'd love it if people got on and were all smiling like this at Christmas all the time. It would be great. Remember the John Lewis ad this year about fostering, the idea of welcoming people in, or have your elf a very good Christmas, from the film Elf, and the Little Bear, and I think that's the M&S one. I don't know what that is. But in some ways, this is the equivalent of our Hicks paintings. So here's the problem. On the one hand, we do want a world where we all get along with each other. But we also know that just to pretend that that's what life is really like is a little bit out of reality. I don't know what your reaction is when these adverts come on, but we know, don't we, it's not really like that. It's not realistic. Now, let's just quickly return to that picture in Isaiah. How is this idea of peace and harmony and justice, how will that all be realized? And I think Hicks realized as he was painting some of these paintings, as we go back through them, that actually, at the end of the day, human beings cannot do it for themselves. However much we try, however much we have good intentions, however much we say, yes, this year, this Christmas is going to be better, we're going to get on. At the end of the year, there's still some of the tensions that we all have as human beings. Now, Hicks himself saw that there was a kind of an answer, and it comes in the first bit of the reading that Joy gave to us. Here it is back on the screen just for a minute. This peaceable kingdom where the lion lies down with the bear and they all eat the same food, and there's peace and there's harmony and there's no kind of tension or problems, that's only going to come about because of what the writer in the book of Isaiah says. And it says that there's going to be someone who is going to come, a shoot that will come up from the stump of Jesse. So the people at the time would have realized it was going to come from where King David in the Bible had come from. And the actual Spirit of God would be with that person. And look at the characteristics of this king that's going to bring about this peaceable kingdom. This is the kind of leader that we want, that we're longing for. A spirit of wisdom and understanding, a spirit of counsel and of might, a spirit of knowledge. Look, this person will not judge by what he sees with his eyes or decide by what he hears, but with righteousness he will judge the needy. With justice he will give decisions for the poor of the earth. He will strike the earth with the rod of his mouth. With the breath of his lips he will slay the wicked. Righteousness will be his belt, and faithfulness the sash around his waist. And this is this prophecy, this prediction that someone would come who would be able to do this. And Hicks, in his paintings, sees this. And here is that figure. This is the figure of Jesus Christ. And if you kind of focus in on this bit of the painting, you'll see there's, I suppose, the child Jesus holding the branch, that rod that's going to come. Now, the sad thing for Hicks is that this picture of Jesus, who will bring everything together like that, only fleetingly appears. And by the end of Hicks' life, that figure kind of drifts out completely. It does appear again. Here's an earlier version. And if you see over here, this is the only time it happens. I've dreamed of it here. Here you go. This is in the corner over here. I've blown it up a bit here. This is Jesus, and these are the 12 apostles on the mountain, showing the lordship of who Jesus is. And here you've got that saying, remember, peace and goodwill to all men on whom his favor rests, from the Gospel of Luke. That's what that banner says over there. The amazing thing about Christmas, and this is why, as Christians at this church, if you're a Christian here, this is what we look forward to. We look forward to the birth of this King, Jesus Christ, one who we know was a perfect judge, one who didn't deal in fake news. And maybe you don't realize that all these readings that we've been having tonight and all the carols that we've been singing point to the person of Jesus Christ. And that's not escapism. That's not, it's very gritty and it's quite gloomy. Jesus was born to an unwed mother in less than ideal conditions. He was kind of stalked, as we read, by the king of the day, King Herod. He had to flee to Egypt. He was a refugee. Now, here's my question for you as I close this evening. What do you make of the figure of Jesus? If we live in Western culture, you can't really ignore him. A very famous church historian, a guy called Yaroslav Pelikan, like the bird, wrote this big book that's been very well received called Jesus, Yesterday, Today, and Together. And here's how he starts it. He says, look, Regardless of what anyone may personally think or believe about him, Jesus of Nazareth has been the dominant figure in the history of Western culture for almost 20 centuries. If it were possible, with some sort of super magnet, to pull up out of that history every scrap of metal bearing at least a trace of his name, how much would be left? It is from his birth that most of the human race dates its calendars. It is by his name that millions curse, and in his name that millions pray. And so in this season of Advent, before Christmas Day happens, this is a time when Christians in this church, in other churches in Lowfell, in the Northeast, in the UK, in fact, millions of people all over the world are waiting for this, to remember that this child was born. Who was that promised king? Now you say, well, if he's a king in a kingdom, the world that we see around us isn't like that. Well, of course, there's a sense in which we wait and we remember his first coming, but we also wait for him to come again. It's a bit like the distinction that people make between D-Day, when the Second World War was decisively won, and VE Day, that still had to happen. We're in that kind of middle period. We live between those two times. But the important thing is that Jesus is who he said he was. He was this king. And so now those who believe in him are those who realize that because this king has come and he's forgiven people if they turn to him, as you may know in the Lord's Prayer, we forgive because God has forgiven us. Christians, and I think all humans, believe in justice because there is a standard of justice. This isn't just the sticking plaster of Christmas Day, which often isn't peaceable, or fake smiles, or even putting our fingers in our ears. It's the recognition that there's a sense in which all human beings now can find peace in the person of Jesus Christ. And that's what the good news is. That's what the gospel is. Don't take it just from me. I said this on Sunday when I was speaking in the church. Maybe this year has been overshadowed by the death of Queen Elizabeth II. And in one of her best, I think, Christmas Day speeches on 2011, she herself said this about Jesus. Although we are capable of great acts of kindness, history teaches us that we sometimes need saving from ourselves, from our own recklessness or our greed. God sent into the world a unique person, neither a philosopher nor a general, important though they are, but a saviour with the power to forgive. So maybe you've been wondering what Christmas is all about. Well, this is what it's all about. It's remembering this king who would come, this king who has come, this perfect king, and now that waiting for him, remembering his birth, remembering his coming again, when as Christians we believe he will bring in that peaceable kingdom. Actually, that's the world that we all want. We know that we can't do it by ourselves, and the answer lies in the person of Jesus Christ. I don't know what you make of Jesus. If you want to know more, then in the new year, we'll be having a series, if you come on a Sunday morning at 10:30, 3 kind of talks where Jesus calls all people to follow him. And you'd be very welcome to come to that. There's also some courses that we can run called Christianity Explored. If you're interested in finding more about who Jesus is, what he came to do and what we have to do in response, then please speak to myself or Chris, who's been leading the service. And there's some free literature at the back, some things where you can read more about who Jesus is. Well, that just leaves me to say, I hope you have a very peaceable Christmas and a happy New Year. I'm going to hand back to Chris.